Nowadays, you got to have that kind because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. I hope everyone is keeping wonderfully well. It's the Hurling Preview for this weekend's games, of course, taking place in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. As always, I'm here to give my preview and predictions ahead of this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship action. And you know what? We have some cracking games to run through in the Hurling Championship this weekend. We've two qualifiers, two provincial finals, a Joe McDonagh Cup final, and also a Joe McDonagh relegation playoff as well. All the games are going to be very well contested. There's going to be a lot on the line, a lot of drama, and of course, obviously, knockout hurling comes into effect this weekend with the fact that there is some qualifiers. And obviously, for some of the Joe McDonagh and for the Joe McDonagh Cup teams, this will be the end of their season, other than Westmeath, who of course do have a relegation playoff still to come in the National League. But look, listen, we're here obviously to preview this weekend's action. If you are new around here, hit the like button and subscribe if you can. Even if you're subscribed, if you could leave a like, I would very much appreciate it. Share this out to as many people as possible so we can continue the growth of the channel. Look, listen, we'll run straight through the action. We'll get straight into it. And I suppose we'll start with the two qualifier games. You've got Clare going up against Wexford, and you've got Waterford going up against Laois. Clare and Wexford, I mean, this is going to be such a fascinating game indeed between these two counties. I mean, like, obviously the whole Brian Lohan, Davy Fitz situation, you know, the Davy Fitz derby is what many people are referring to this game as, and I can completely understand why. Obviously Davy Fitz, you know, formerly manager of Clare and former player of Clare as well, won an All-Ireland both as a player and as a manager. You know, Brian Lohan obviously won the All-Ireland as a player as well. And obviously a huge falling out between the two somewhere along the way. I'm not going to get into the whole specifics of the whole situation between Brian Lohan and Davy Fitz, but it's just it's a game that certainly has sparked up. And obviously you had the whole COVID situation with Wexford and Clare, and in that game in particular, and it caused a lot of controversy and a lot of debate amongst both Davy Fitz and Brian Lohan. So there's really a lot on the line here, and actually, as a matter of fact, like, there's a job on the line here in my opinion, because look, listen, I don't think Davy Fitz should be, you know, sacked or whatever from Wexford if they lose this game. But I do think he'll step away if they lose this game, because he's said it on numerous times before. He'll has no problem stepping away, you know, if it's not working, or if the hurling isn't paying off. And in particular, obviously last year when they got beat by Clare, he was saying, you know, if the players don't want me here, I won't be here anymore. And look, listen, it would be sad to see Davy leave Wexford. You know, he's done a tremendous job, obviously winning the Leinster title. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves as a manager. I really don't think he does. What he achieved with Clare is nothing short of phenomenal in an era where Kilkenny and Tipperary were dominating the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. Galway were the up-and-coming team. Cork had a tremendous team back then. Dublin did as well. And Clare were still the team that went on to win the All-Ireland. So, you know, I think it's a little bit harsh, some of the criticism he gets. And look, listen, Wexford played phenomenal hurling against Kilkenny. They really did. They went all out. The running game, the short hand passing, coming out, playing out from the back, you know, just really tremendous hurling. They left everything out on the pitch. They gave 110%. There was nothing more that they could give in that game than what they gave against Kilkenny. They were absolutely tremendous. Dermot Ryan, Liam McGovern, Lee Chin, Rory O'Connor, like, these guys just leaving absolutely everything out there. And I thought they were absolutely tremendous. They really were. It was just Kilkenny just seemed to not go away. I mean, they were like that annoying friend that just wouldn't leave the room. They just kept going and going. And every time Wexford came back, Kilkenny had an answer for them. And in the end, it was, who was going to flinch first in many ways. And it was Wexford that were. And unfortunately got beat in the end out the traps in extra time. So, very intriguing game. Clare obviously had that whole situation with James Owens and the sin bin of Aidan McCarthy against Tipperary. Tipperary capitalised quite a lot, you know, during that period where Clare, you know, obviously we're down to 14 men. And look, listen, would Tipperary have gone on to won the game anyways? I think they would have personally. think they had enough on the day. Even Ian Galvin in the second half certainly didn't have the same influence that he had in the first half, for example. And, Ryan Taylor obviously went off as well, in the closing 10 minutes went off being substituted. So Clare certainly didn't have the same influence in the closing stages, and that would be a worry, because I feel like if Wexford bring that same intensity that they brought in the Kilkenny game, I think they will win this game. I really do. Their running game has been brilliant, and their short game is fantastic. Obviously getting their offence was brilliant in many ways against Kilkenny. Like, there was just nothing more they could have really done. I thought Owen Cody was just phenomenal at different times. Obviously Matt O'Hanlon's probably going to be the man picking up Tony Kelly, and Tony Kelly, as we very well know, one of the best hurlers in the country. So it will be interesting to see what the game plan is for Davy Fitz, because if you remember last year, Tony Kelly had some absolute wonder scores in the Wexford game. Probably played his best game of hurling of the year in that game. And it's going to be interesting to see how Brian Lohan sets out Tony Kelly. Will he operate in midfield? Will he go onto the half forward line? Normally I think to kind of isolate Tony Kelly out of the game, we've seen teams crowd the midfield to try take him out of the game. But what that then does is it leaves spaces for Ryan Taylor and Aaron Shanahan for a few more spaces in front of goal to get goals and points and whatnot. And we've even seen that if you force Tony Kelly over to the sideline, even when it's back to goal, he can still hit absolute wonder scores. So, I think for Wexford, they obviously need to put a bit of emphasis on Tony Kelly. There's no doubt about it. But I do also think they need to be wary that they don't leave spaces for Ian Galvin, Aidan McCarthy and whatnot, because I think Clare in particular this year have proven that they can cope without Tony Kelly to a certain extent. They have more on the table than just Tony Kelly. So ultimately, in terms of a prediction, I'm going to be honest, I can't call this. I think it's going to go to extra time. I just have a sneaky feeling Clare are going to sneak over the line, but I also think Wexford are I don't know. I really don't know. This is such a hard one to call. This might be the hardest game of the weekend to call. I'm going to go with Clare. I've made my mind up eventually. I just think Clare have been the more consistent team over the past year. And I think Wexford are going to put so much emphasis on stopping Tony Kelly that it's going to free up other men like Aidan McCarthy. John Conlon, I think, will do a tremendous job probably on Lee Chin. So I'm going to go with Clare to win it in the end by a couple of points. I do think it will go to extra time. I do think this will be a tremendous battle, but I think Clare will just about have enough to sneak past Wexford. Waterford and Laois, this game is probably a little bit more easier to call, although I would have thought that about Laois and Antrim. And to be fair to Laois, a tremendous valiant effort to see off Antrim in that game. They really stood up on what has been a very disappointing year for Laois GAA in many ways. Obviously losing every game this year in football and losing every game in hurling up until that Antrim game, but they really started that game very fast. They showed the tenacity to win. The likes of PJ Scully were fantastic. Patrick Purcell really stood up as well when his team needed them. And even when they were down to 13 men at different stages in the game, they still rose up. They still done enough to win the game. And I thought they were fully deserved of that victory. They really were. They never let their heads drop. They stuck to the game plan. And they started that game like a team full of confidence, which you wouldn't have associated with Laois earlier in the year. They just started very fast. They blocked out all the negative energy from, that disappointing defeat to Wexford, and obviously some of the hammerings they took in the league as well. But they are coming up against a Waterford side that were in an All-Ireland final last year, and look, they have massive injuries. Jamie Barron, Tig de Burka, Conor Prunty, Stephen O'Keefe. So many injuries all across the board, and they've had to implement new players into the side like Irla Daly and whatnot. And it's going to be interesting. But I do think Waterford will have enough over Laois. I think one of the reasons why Clare were so effective against Waterford in the last game was because they nullified Calum Lyons, who was a huge asset to this Waterford side at wing back, at getting forward. They played Tony Kelly in and around the forward line. And, Calum Lyons obviously was picking up Tony Kelly. It took away Calum Lyons' attacking threat. He was focused too much on Tony Kelly. I don't see that happening in this game. I don't think Laois have a good enough forward to take away Calum Lyons' attacking threat. I don't think he'd be focused on his man as much as in the Clare game. So going to go with Waterford to get the victory. I think they'll win out by 5, but I do think Laois to cause a couple of problems, and a part of me wouldn't be surprised if Laois pulled off a shock here, because We've seen them down the years, 2019 beating Dublin, last year they nearly beat Clare, so it's not impossible that Laois don't win this game, but I do think that Waterford will just about have enough. We then move on to the Joe McDonagh Cup, and of course we have Westmeath and Kerry in the Joe McDonagh Cup final, but first of all we'll have a look through at the relegation playoff that will be taking place between Meade and Kildare. Kildare hurling has certainly been on the rise at the moment. Obviously their under 20s have pulled off one or two shock wins. They beat Wexford there the other, about a week ago. So fair play to Kildare for they're certainly a county that's on the rise at the moment, but similar to Antrim, in terms of Antrim done such a tremendous job in Division 1 hurling. To go back down to the Joe McDonagh Cup was just a massive setback for their development, and I would put Kildare in a similar bracket. They need to be winning this game. They need to be beating Meade. It's all good putting up brilliant performances against Westmeath and Carlow, but if you really want to make that step up, if you want to solidify yourself as a Joe McDonagh Cup team, you need to be beating this Meade team. And look, listen, fair play to Meade against Kerry. I mean, that was a huge win, 4-point victory. I don't think anyone would have expected Meade to win that game. The likes of Jack Regan hitting 11 points on the day, Patrick Conneely hitting 6 points, Alan Douglas with 3. I didn't see the game personally, but fair play to Meade. That must have been one hell of a performance to overturn Kerry on the day. And as for Kildare, the likes of Jack Sheridan's been tremendous this year in particular. You're looking at the likes of David Slattery in there, Johnny Byrne, James Burke has been another impressive player for Kildare as well. So I'm going to go with Kildare to win it by 3. I think they'll have enough over Meade. They could end up winning this a lot more comfortably, but I think Meade will be coming in with a lot of momentum. So Kildare by 3. And Westmeath and Kerry is another interesting one as well, of course, taking place in the Joe McDonagh Cup final. It's the third time that Westmeath will be playing in a Joe McDonagh Cup final. It's the second time that Kerry will be playing in a Joe McDonagh Cup final. So something has to give. One of these counties will be crowned Joe McDonagh Cup champions at the final whistle. And I expect Westmeath to get the job done. I think they've overturned that very negative and disappointing league campaign. Obviously, it was going to be very tough for them coming up against the sides that they have. But the thing that's impressed me the most about Westmeath in both the Carlow and Kildare game is that they had the will to win. They had the will to come from behind against Carlow. They dug deep against Kildare. When the going got tough, the tough got going, as they say, and that was exactly what happened in that Westmeath game. The likes of Killian Doyle, the likes of Kieran Doyle, Davy Glennon as well, and it's been a tough year for Westmeath, and to show the kind of inner strength within themselves to turn it around, I think they deserve massive credit. As for Kerry, I just don't think they've had the same spark that they had last year. I haven't seen enough of Kerry, in all honesty, to really kind of pass too much of a judgment on them, but the fact that they are losing to Meade is a little bit worrying. And even looking through some of their league performances, it seems hit or miss. Some good performances here and there, some kind of disappointing performances here and there. Have teams maybe figured Kerry out a little bit more this year? In particular, obviously last year they were kind of the unknown quantity a little bit. Not many teams would have expected Kerry to be in a Joe McDonagh Cup final and to be as competitive as they were. So I'm going to go with Westmeath to get the job done. I think they'll win it by 4. We then move on to the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship. It's Dublin and Kilkenny. And as a Dublin fan myself, can Dublin win just their second Leinster Championship in 60 years? Can they upset the odds? Can they do what they done in 2013? In reverse order, as a matter of fact, they beat Kilkenny in the semi-final after a replay, I think it was. And then they beat Galway in the final. They also beat Wexford, actually, in a quarter-final as well. Well, look, listen, 2013 and 2021, it's 7 years apart. There's been a long time, of course. It has been a long time, of course, since 2013. It's actually 8 years apart now that I think about it. Or is it 8 years? Or 8 years, I think, yeah. So, look, listen, for Dublin, I mean, they still have a few players that were a part of that team. Danny Sutcliffe, Liam Rush, for example, as well. Mark Schutte tends to come off the bench on a couple of occasions and adds a different dynamic to this Dublin side. There's a few big factors as a Dublin fan for me. I will be going to this game, so it'll be interesting to see what the atmosphere is like if Dublin do go ahead and win this Leinster Championship. But Owen O'Donnell is injured, and that's a massive you're talking about Dublin's best player, who would normally mark Kilkenny's best player in TJ Reid. And Owen O'Donnell's done a tremendous job on TJ Reid in the past couple of seasons. He actually done a tremendous job on him last year in the Leinster Championship. It was one of the main reasons why Dublin were able to narrow what was a 16-point lead down to 1 point, and obviously Kilkenny still went on to win the game. But Owen O'Donnell done a tremendous job on TJ Reid that day, and unfortunately he's going to be injured for this game. Adrian Dunphy slotted in there in the Galway game for the remainder of the few minutes, at fullback. So, I'm not too sure. I don't know how we're going to be able to stop TJ Reid. Like, the Kilkenny are going to float long balls in there, in and around the edge of the square. If TJ Reid doesn't get on the end of them, you'll see Owen Cody. You'll see some of the other lads in there as well. So it's going to be very hard to see how Dublin nullify Kilkenny. Like, Dara Gray's been brilliant at getting forward from wing back, but will he be more now focused on some of Kilkenny's added threat? And when you've got players like Walter Walsh that can come off the bench, it just makes it so difficult for Dublin. It really, really does. And I just don't see us getting over the line here, unfortunately. As much as I'd love to see us do it, I really don't. Like, you're looking at Kilkenny in particular. Billy Ryan has kind of come into the fold a little bit as well. Alan Murphy and even James Bergen coming off the bench in extra time. So I just don't see how Dublin are going to beat Kilkenny. I could see us causing them one or two problems, but I think Kilkenny will win it comfortably enough. Look, listen, hopefully I'm wrong. I really do. Hopefully the likes of Danny Sutcliffe can have an absolute stormer, and Donald Burke can be as efficient as ever from place balls. But I do think that Kilkenny will have enough and they'll win it by 7 points. And last but not least, we have the Munster Senior Hurling Championship between Limerick and Tipperary. Always an intriguing game when these two meet each other. Obviously, they played each other, of course, in the 2020 game last year in the Munster Senior semi-final, I think it was. And they played each other, of course, in the Munster final back in 2019 as well, which was a very intriguing game between the two counties, which obviously Limerick went on to win. Looking at Limerick, first of all, they certainly haven't clicked into gear so far in 2021, but you would look at Limerick and you would think, kind of similar to the Dublin footballers. When Dublin obviously play their rivals Meade, they tend to kind of elevate themselves and raise their levels and kind of get more up for it. I could see something similar happening with Limerick. Like, it kind of happened in the Tipperary game last year. I don't think they were particularly amazing against Clare the week previously, but in the Tipperary game they just stood up. They really kind of raised their levels, and I think because the Limerick players and the Limerick management know deep down the Tipperary are probably their closest test in Munster year on year. And I think, it's no surprises that this is, Limerick are going for their third Munster in a row, and Tipperary have been there to contest them 2 out of the 3 times. And obviously Tipperary won an All-Ireland in between Limerick's 2 All-Irelands that they've won in the last 3 years. So I think these are, up there in terms of maybe Tipperary aren't number 2 in the country, but they're certainly thereabouts. And it certainly wouldn't surprise me if Tipperary did turn Limerick over. I think for Tipperary, like we've mentioned it on a couple of stages before, can you get the best out of Shamie Callan, who's certainly getting older, John McGrath as well. Bubbles O'Dwyer looked good, in particular in the Clare game. Jason Ford was fantastic. Michael Breen, actually, as a matter of fact, in midfield, offered something completely different to what we've seen before. So I do think that Tipperary will cause a couple of problems for Limerick, but I do think that this is the game where Limerick will probably announce themselves once again and remind people as to why they are the champions of the country. Aaron Glenn hasn't really clicked into gear yet. Kyle Hayes hasn't quite offered that same threat at wing back either. So I am looking at it in particular, and I do just feel that Limerick are going to click into gear here. I think they certainly have the talent. They certainly have the players with Shamie Flanagan. You've got Pat Ryan coming off the bench as well. And I think Limerick's style will be too much for Tipperary, because Limerick play at quite, it's such an intense game when you watch Limerick. They're going at it for the full 70 minutes. With Tipperary, they've kind of played in stages, like even in the Clare game, brilliant in different moments, and then they go quiet and invite teams back in. I just don't think you can do that against Limerick. So I think Limerick will win by 4 points, and they will be Munster champions for a third year in a row. Anyway, lads, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Do let me know down in the comments below what your predictions are for this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship action. Certainly a bumper weekend in hurling, so stay tuned for match reactions, interviews, and absolutely everything coming out over the weekend. I'll be covering all the hurling games, discussing them all in big detail, so do stay tuned for that. But anyways, my name is Aaron. Do leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.